Hello and welcome to Shoot the Hostage with me, Dan, and my partner, Sarah. We're a movie podcast who talks about a different film each week based on a theme. We do swear and we do spoil the featured movie, so only ever listen if you've seen the film or you don't care too much about spoilers. If you're a regular listener, you can just skip forward until you hear the intro music because you've heard all of this before. But if you are new to the show and you do enjoy what you hear, there are a couple of things you can do to help support the show. Firstly, make sure that you're subscribed on your podcast player so you get notified when new shows drop on Mondays. You could rate us 5 stars on Spotify, which couldn't be easier. You just hit the star icon below the show's artwork. Or if you have a spare few minutes, we'd love it if you could submit a review wherever you listen. Make sure you come follow us at STH_pod on social media. We are active on Instagram, X, Threads, and TikTok. And lastly, the biggest thing you can do to help is tell a friend about the show. So that's about it. That's enough preamble from me. Over to me and Sarah for this week's episode. So we're back for another episode in our season of movies about dreams.
Your season of movies about dreams.
My season of movies about dreams. And it's our second Nicolas Cage movie.
This season?
No.
Ever?
Ever.
The first one being Con Air?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Very, very different Cage performances.
Very different Cage performances. One has a bunny, the other one does not.
That's the most notable difference, yes.
Yeah. And John Malkovich is not in Dream Scenario, as far as I'm aware.
I wish he had been.
Do you know what? He was in Being John Malkovich, and that was a Kaufman thing, and this is Kaufman-esque, isn't it?
Yeah, I could see that. Kaufman adjacent, maybe.
Dream Scenario, then. So 2023,
Mm-hmm.
Where were you when you first saw this movie?
You know where I was.
All those years ago. How did you happen upon Dream Scenario?
I was sitting next to you at the Curzon.
Yeah, what a story.
Right?
So 2023, very recent, most recent movie. We keep doing recent movies.
We keep saying that, yeah.
Which I think that's quite nice maybe to have a recent movie in this season, but let's not make that hard and fast rule, just if you like. Can you name any other movies that Nicolas Cage released in 2023?
Last year? He
Yes.
probably did about 17. He might be the most hard-working man in Hollywood outside of Danny Trejo.
Yeah, he's done a lot. Can you name any others from 2023?
From last year, no.
Okay. Well, obviously you've got Dream Scenario. But
Yeah.
there were 7.
There was
Right.
okay.
So
I wasn't that far off.
You said 17, had a 7 in the title. But you would think maybe 3, maybe 4, and you would think that's a busy year for an actor.
Uh-huh.
But 7?
Yep.
Okay. So Dream Scenario, and some of these are smaller roles.
Yeah.
The Flash, spoilers. I don't give
of
a
course,
shit.
yeah.
You should have seen it by now. Renfield.
That was last year, was it?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, we saw that.
Yep. I enjoyed that quite a lot.
Mhm.
Sympathy for the Devil, which I haven't seen.
I've seen it advertised. Is Joel Kinnaman in that?
Sure.
I've seen the poster.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Retirement Plan.
Nope.
Haven't seen that either. The Old Way. Haven't
Nope.
seen that. I think that's a Western.
It sounds like a Western.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's on the cover of the poster, and he's got a hat. He's got a Western hat. So you know it's a Western.
Must be a Western then.
And he's got one of those buckle tires.
A
things.
bolo tie.
Yeah, that's it. And he did a TMV Investigates Lisa Marie Presley.
Oh.
I don't really think that should count as a credit because
That doesn't sound like a film.
it was on Letterboxd. But
Okay.
it's probably more of a talking head situation, like, yeah, she was done dirty situation. I don't know. TMZ, we don't like TMZ, do we?
They're a bit scummy.
I mean, they sort of made a joke about TMZ in that,
In Nope.
didn't they?
Yeah.
So I gather that I'm not really familiar. I guess it's more of a states thing. But yeah, I gather it's like bottom of the barrel journalism.
Oh, yeah. Bottom
situation.
feeding paparazzi types.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, 7 movies in total, or 6 if you remove the TMZ one. But I've written down TMV, so...
I think you said TMV.
Did I?
Yeah, the first time.
Okay. I can't edit it now. It lives there forever.
It's there in perpetuity.
My mistakes are recorded. Yeah, so any ideas on who was originally attached for Dream Scenario? Very
No.
briefly.
I've not had a great deal of time to read the trivia like I would normally, so I'm excited to get some nuggets of factoids thrown at me.
Any guesses? Who else might be interested in a low-key drama / sci-fi / horror-ish? What comedian might be in the market for doing something a bit left of field?
A comedian?
Yeah. Is left of field, is that a phrase?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know. I need more than that.
It's not Lee Evans.
Oh, now I know. No, still no idea.
It was Sandler.
Really?
Adam Sandler, yeah. I thought I asked you that because I thought because of the A24 connection, maybe you might get that. Obviously, this is an A24 movie, and they did
Uncut Gems was A24.
Uncut Gems, yeah. And Ari Aster is on as a producer of this movie.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, he's the best, isn't he? I love his output. Honestly, I haven't seen Beau is Afraid yet, but just he takes such swings, and I love it.
He's got another one on the horizon.
Thank God, it's about fucking time. Although Beau is Afraid was apparently 3 hours long, so...
Well, that's why we haven't watched it yet, but
yeah,
we will.
We will. So Nicolas Cage then, so he's a man, he's a myth, he's a legend. Everybody has an opinion on Nicolas Cage. Like, I feel like most people love him.
They do these days.
Most film lovers love him and appreciate him, but there was a time period there where he was a bit of a joke.
He was a bit of a laughing stock for a while.
Yeah, and it's... when I sort of remember that, I'm not too internet illiterate, but I do remember...
You're not too internet illiterate? Au contraire.
Fuck you. I'm not very internet.
You're not very internet, yeah.
I'm not good at memes.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at memes. You show me a meme sometimes and I read the words out loud.
And then I have to explain it to you and why it's funny.
Slowly faced. Yeah. And then you're like, it's a joke. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not very savvy when it comes to that sort of thing. But obviously the Nicolas Cage stuff, I remember that being a thing. And I've always been a fan of Nicolas Cage, more of the action stuff for me than he's more kind of indie type fare for me. It's The Rock is the greatest movie of all time. Con Air, Face Off, just the absolute three of some of my favorite action movies of all time.
Okay.
And I've always been a fan of him, and I've always appreciated that he makes an effort. I don't know if always that the decisions that he makes fully work, and I would imagine that he's probably the first to admit that sometimes it doesn't, but he fucking tries his best. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Even during that time when people are like, look at all these funny performances. Like, yeah, it's funny. You take it out of context, it's funny to watch and it's enjoyable. But I always appreciated it. I always knew that there was a reason for the decisions that he makes. It's not like he's going, I'm just going to be crazy for the sake of it in this one. There's a reason. Have you seen Bad Lieutenant?
No.
Werner Herzog.
Is that the remake of the Abel Ferrara?
It's not really a remake. It's like just another story about
another bad lieutenant.
Crooked copper, yeah, another bad lieutenant. I think it's called Port of New Orleans or something.
Okay,
but that's good.
Do we pronounce it Bad Lieutenant over here? I suppose we should.
Why would we do that?
Because the Americans say lieutenant, and the same word in the UK is pronounced lieutenant. I've never understood why.
So we don't have lieutenants here.
We do, but they're lieutenants and it's spelled the same.
But it's not.
And there's no F in it. It's very confusing, Dan.
Are you talking about police or army?
Yes.
Well, this conversation is fascinating. Okay, so what was I saying? Bad Lieutenant. Right?
Yeah.
So Bad Lieutenant, yeah. He was very good in that, and just like a larger than life, insane Nicolas Cage performance. But my reason for bringing that up is that that's what that role called for, and that's what he did. Whereas Dream Scenario is a very kind of understated, maybe the most restrained I've ever seen him. I can't think of...
Pig.
Yeah, Pig, he was pretty restrained, you're right. Yeah. And he's made some really interesting choices lately. He's made
some phenomenal choices. I loved Mandy. I loved Colour Out of Space.
I loved Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh
That
yeah, that
made
was
me
fun.
laugh a lot. But yeah, Pig was amazing. Colour Out of Space I need to revisit at some point. Really enjoyed that. But just really interesting choices in terms of the movies that he's decided to do of the last, maybe I would say maybe 5 years. I would say that he's really stepped up his game in terms of the movies that he's doing. Because, you know, go back.
I would say the quality of them has definitely increased.
The quality has definitely increased. I mean, you've got, and I haven't seen it, but things like Left Behind, which was the Christian propaganda movie.
Oh.
Which apparently I watched a video the other day of 91 movies Nicolas Cage ranked, and that was firmly at the bottom.
Oh wow!
And you've just got stuff like, and I haven't seen a lot of it, but like Drive Angry and
you've never seen Drive Angry?
No.
Holy cow! It's so bad.
Is it? Is it that bad?
Some people love it. I hated it. It was laughably bad.
Is William Fichtner in that?
I believe so. Look, I've seen it. I've seen it once when it came out. And I do not care to ever watch it again.
Okay, well, I've been kind of curious. There's a bunch of them, those Nicolas Cage movies that came out, that if they would have come out a decade before, I would have been the first person at the cinema to see them.
What, even Ghost Rider?
I did watch Ghost Rider at the time, and it was kind of forgettable, I think.
Yeah.
I think I watched it, was like, yeah, okay. I never saw the sequel. I think maybe from after, I want to say National Treasure, which I think is fine. It's a perfectly enjoyable film. But after that, maybe is when that run of odd and bad movies sort of starts to kick in.
I don't know what happened, because it sort of wasn't necessarily his fault, but it seemed like people were reluctant to cast him for the sort of roles he was capable of.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because he's such a character. And I do think there's. I mean, I believe he's spoken on it, but he got into massive debt with tax people. I don't know what they call in America, the tax people, but
I mean, just he laughs at that in Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's part of the joke.
Yeah. And I think he overexposed himself to real estate and bought just properties all over the world. The market crashed. And then he lost a shitload of money, owed a load of money in taxes, paid it all back. He just paid back every single penny, and moved to Las Vegas so he didn't have to pay any more taxes. But yeah, and I think it was probably that period of repaying that tax bill when it's just like, what was that script? Yeah, I'll take it. I'm not. Maybe he was more discerning than that, but it didn't feel like it.
It didn't. No.
And it was just a run of like really, I don't know. I mean, I've never seen that Wicker Man remake, but I'm very curious to watch it. Very curious.
Maybe we'll shoehorn it into a season at some point.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and I guess my point is that the last 5 years there's been some really good choices, in my opinion. Stuff like Renfield, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
He might be my second favourite Dracula, which is such a bold thing to say.
After Leslie Nielsen?
Oh, get fucked. After Bela Lugosi.
Oh yeah, that's right. Of course.
How dare you?
But yeah, it's interesting that he chose to do this movie, and I've heard him speak on this, that I can't remember all of them, but he said that over the course of his career he's received 5 scripts that he just loved and didn't want to change a single thing of, and this was one of them. I know Vampire's Kiss was another one.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an odd film.
Haven't seen that. There's so much Cage that I haven't seen.
Well, yeah, there are only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. I believe Adaptation was one.
Okay, yeah.
I believe Leaving Las Vegas was one. And the other one was The Rock.
Of course.
No, I don't know what the other one was. But but yeah, he credits this as one of the 5 that he read and was just like, yes, that's brilliant. I have to do this movie. And not only that I don't want to change anything. I'm going to bring Nicolas Cage to it. Don't you fucking worry. However, what you've written is a masterwork, and I really don't need to change anything on the page.
Albeit a Nicolas Cage with a prosthetic nose.
Yeah, it was a prosthetic nose, was it?
It was, yeah.
You said that in the middle of the movie, and then you got out your phone, so I assumed that you was looking up whether or not it was in fact a prosthetic nose.
I was, and it was.
Brilliant. That's great.
So I did read somewhere that I know you already said that Adam Sandler was maybe attached to it at one point, or considered. I did read that the writer-director penned the script with nobody in mind.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Which is crazy, because this could have been written for Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, and maybe that's how he felt when he read it, you know. I know, again, like he's spoken about the memification. Is that a word?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it used before.
How he was sort of a huge meme. And there's even a line of dialogue in the movie where it says, all memes become dreams. And that was obviously, well, it's not obviously, it wasn't informed by Nicolas Cage, but I imagine him reading that going, fucking yes, you know, I was a meme. And I know that he channeled quite a lot of that because I think he felt quite burdened by that and he didn't love it. He was like, this is, you know, I've worked hard on this stuff. That, you know, this was all kind of by design and carefully thought out, and people just sort of think I'm a bit of a joke now. So I think he was a bit pissed at that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that he's used that and he's channeled that in this movie and sort of use his experience in that to explore his character in this. Paul Matthews, which is like the blandest, most grey name that you could think of.
I mean, that's obviously what they were going for. Like, what's the most forgettable name?
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to anybody called Paul or Matthews, but I don't know, something about that is just utterly forgettable.
But all of it together, the name, the way that he dresses, he's just very dull. He's just meekness is just a very dull and boring, actionless character. And that's the point. That's the whole point of his character. And I think, I don't know, like, I didn't see Nicolas Cage in this, like, and that's a huge compliment. Like, I didn't, not like we spoke about, I'm not going to spoil Longlegs, but we spoke about that on a Patreon, and that was too Nicolas Cage for me. That took me out of it when he was doing that thing. But what he did in this, I thought was really, it was just suited the mood of the film.
Yeah. It suited the material to a T.
Yeah. And I'm writer director Kristoffer Borgli.
Mm-hmm. And was this only his third feature?
I'm not sure. Yep, sure. If that's what you read, we'll go with that. I do know that there's a film that he made called Sick of Myself, which I haven't seen. It
was at the Curzon a year or two ago, and I didn't connect the dots until last night when I was reading about the film. But yeah, that was getting really good critiques at the time. So I'm gutted that we didn't get time to watch that.
Yeah,
in the run up to this.
Having seen this one, I'm really on board with his sense of humor.
Yeah,
he's got that kind of not really. It's more awkward humor, I would say.
It's very satire, cringe comedy in this,
but I enjoy it very much. Yeah. There's a movie called Drib.
Don't know that one. Was that his first film?
I don't know. I've written down no dates or anything, but I've got those two films written down. And in 2023, he released a 6-minute short where he is acting in it, and he plays a man trying to remember the name of an actor.
Oh God, relatable.
And the short film is called Willem Dafoe. It made me laugh. I read the synopsis. I read the title of the movie, then I read the synopsis, and I thought, yeah, okay.
You don't even need to make the film at that point. Just release the synopsis. That's funny.
Yeah. So we're actually talking about a movie about dreams this time, and I know kind of we've spoken about Altered States and Dark City, which is an interpretation of different states of consciousness,
which weren't about dreams.
And also, well, you're talking about simulation and stuff, and that that's a form of dream. It's related. I'm gonna keep that thread going. And in fact, Nick Bostrom is name checked in this movie, so that's all completely planned. Who obviously popularized the term. I don't think he invented simulation theory, but I'm pretty sure that he came up with the 3 rules of simulation.
Oh yeah, obviously he says. I don't know who this guy is. You're going to have to explain it when we get to that point.
Oh, maybe we will.
You're more the philosopher guy.
I'm not a philosopher guy.
Well, I'm not the philosopher guy.
Yeah, so the first scene is actually a dream.
Yep.
And is it his daughter's dream?
It's one of his daughters, yeah.
Yeah, he's got 2 daughters and a wife. And his daughter is dreaming, and she sees him just raking up the leaves in the garden.
Yeah, it's not immediately obvious that it's a dream.
No, and then a set of keys falls out of the sky, which has got a frog keychain, which I enjoyed very much and only noticed on this watch. And then a shoe falls out of the sky.
Yeah.
And then a body. Is it a body that falls into the pool?
Something smashes the outdoor table.
Right, okay.
And then she starts levitating.
Yeah, she starts floating away.
And she's screaming for help, and her dad's doing nothing.
And that is kind of a foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the movie, right?
Well, that's his entire MO. He's a man of inaction, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's his biggest flaw,
But
of which he has many.
His inaction ultimately leads to him losing his family.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for me, like, especially on rewatch, watching that opening scene, like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bookended with a dream sequence as well.
It is, yeah.
We begin with a dream sequence and we end with a dream sequence. And in both of those, there's a sense of loss. And that's kind of what this film is about, right? It's about his inability to take action and the consequences of that, and what that looks like in a modern world.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's about any number of things. I think one of the things I like most about this film is that it is quite open to interpretation. I read an interview with the director, and obviously he did have some quite concrete ideas of what the film was about for him. But I think you can get any number of readings on it, depending on what you project at the movie, I suppose. But I know ultimately that the director basically, I think he was quoted in the interview as saying he's compelled by mass culture and recognition and status. And our self-worth is now through the eyes of others. I think it's provided a proxy for feeling accomplished. Yeah.
And it's that interesting... the psychology aspect of people, how people view you, you know, how you view yourself is not necessarily how other people view you.
Well, I mean, we get the opening dream sequence, which sort of, I absolutely love the dream sequences in this film.
They're brilliant.
And it's funny because you're not really a fan of magical realism, and I am.
That's fair.
So it tickles me that you enjoy that so much. We'll touch on that later.
Okay, we'll come back to it. Put a pin in that then.
Yeah, but yeah, there's the second scene where he's sort of hearing about the dream from his daughter when they're at the breakfast table, I think, and he's so concerned with her perception of him.
That's immediately like that's the very good thing about this movie is when I first watched it, I was unsure what this movie was, and I liked it. But I wasn't sure why, and I think I like it a lot more on a repeat viewing.
Me too.
And I had it on for a third time today while I was doing some flat pack furniture. Yeah. So I've actually seen it 2.5 times now. But that straight away when he's like, "So I didn't do anything."
Yeah,
he's making it about him straight away. So you're introduced. Oh, this guy he's got an ego, and it's awkward humor. It's it's kind of that situation where the family. Quite a lot of times when he's talking to his family, I get the impression that they're like, "Oh, not this again," sort of thing.
Yeah,
and that kind of
his daughters are very dismissive of him when he starts down that road.
Yeah, and there's some really great eye rolling from Janet as well, his wife in the movie,
Julianne Nicholson, who is excellent.
Yeah, she's really good in this, and maybe like she's so subtle. But there's some moments in this where, like I say, she's reacting to what Nicolas Cage is saying in character, and you just get that idea that this is a lived experience.
I hope not.
She's seen this 1,000 times, and she's kind of sick of this shit. And I got that, and she didn't get that much screen time. So to get as much depth from that character as I got, she gets a couple of sort of nuggets, and you think, oh, she's not a perfect character either. Which I like.
Yeah.
Complex. Like nobody in this is good or bad. It's just like they're just human beings.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't call him, like, Paul's not a bad guy.
No, not at all.
And I don't even know if I would call it ego as such. I just feel like there's such a disconnect between who he actually is and who he thinks he is. And I get the impression the people around him are more sick of that disconnect, that cognitive dissonance, than they are with him as a person. Like they sort of seem a bit more willing to accept his faults, but he doesn't. He's not willing to.
It is a weird one, and I suppose it goes back to what you were saying earlier about interpretation and how you see this movie. I don't have a fixed viewpoint of this, and maybe it's going to be one of those that changes with time as well. But on the one hand, I think he's a clever guy. He's an evolutionary biologist.
Yep.
He understands, like, the zebra thing is just absolutely rammed down your throat again and again. So it's super relevant.
I do like the zebra analogy, though. I mean, that's the first time we see him like in situ at work, isn't it? And he's talking about the zebra herd theory.
Yeah.
I don't think I paid too much attention to that the first time we watched it. I don't think I realised quite how relevant it was. But
it's done super well because it's telling it like that scene in particular where he's teaching. You can see the students are kind of bored with what he's saying. He's fascinated by his own brain, as far as I can tell, and he understands that that whole thing about it's an analogy for society. There's everything, if you poke your head out, you might be awarded a mate, for lack of a better term, or you might get shot. You're making yourself a target, but then also might be rewarded for it.
Yeah, sticking your head above the parapet is a risky move.
Yeah. And he understands that. So I sort of wrestle with why he's not trying harder with
because
things.
He's just got an abject lack of self-awareness.
So he's got this book that he's wanted to write for the longest time, and I just think he's lazy. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that comes into play as well.
I think he just doesn't necessarily want to put in the work, because when this opportunity comes about, and we haven't even said the main premise of this movie, hopefully you've seen it if you're listening to this, but everyone's dreaming about him, and the second that he becomes in Michael Cera's words, an unconventional celebrity, then he's just thrilled. Like his wife says, you should maybe think about this, and then you smash cut to him going on a news report.
Yeah.
And he knows that if he tries hard, he may be rewarded, but then it's a risk. So I don't know, it's tricky. Maybe he doesn't want to take the risk, but then when this thing comes up, he sort of wants to go with it. So for me, he just maybe doesn't want to put work in to get the notoriety that he wants. Even when they say to him, you can write your book, he ends up writing a pamphlet.
Yeah.
It's like he's not putting any effort into it at all. He's coasting, and he's got his tenure, so he must have worked hard for that, which is part of the complexity of the character. But this other thing that he seems and tells everyone that he wants, he's just not working on it, and I can't figure that out. Maybe it's laziness, maybe it's not wanting to take the risk in case he does get is it just fall victim to some hunters or whatever, however you want to term it. But it's interesting.
I get the impression it's more likely to be that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So this is sort of tangentially related and something that I definitely wanted to ask you. Do you find Paul to be a sympathetic character?
That's an interesting question. He feels like a real character to me. So I kind of, I think he's made some very bad decisions, but haven't we all? So I do feel sorry for him to a degree, but then it's kind of 50. Yeah, I do up to a point, but then there's a point where he should be just taking control of his life as much as one can. Yeah,
I think on second watch, I did find myself feeling really sorry for him, and especially in the second half when things start to go wrong. Because in the first half, he's just sort of like this, a bit of a lovable idiot. Like, obviously, you've said he's really smart. He's not an idiot, but he's not savvy.
Yeah.
He's not savvy enough to know that what's happening could really turn on him.
He doesn't feel very calculating.
No.
Yeah.
And I think the crux of his character that annoys me the most is that, and it's tied to him being absolutely man of inaction, is that he seems to have convinced himself that even though he doesn't do acts of good in the world, but he's not doing anything bad. So by virtue of that, he's convinced himself he's a good guy, quote unquote. But that again just speaks to the fact that he's lazy, he's inactive. It's not, you can't just consider yourself a good person without doing good things. I don't know, like you say, it's a really complicated character. It's definitely not clear cut. There are many shades of grey. But I found that quite interesting, certainly on second watch.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him because the dream stuff is not ultimately his fault. You could argue what the dream stuff is, whether it's all in his dreams, all of this stuff. I don't know. There's ways of reading this movie, but the way that he deals with it is not great. And it's really good that in this film as well, it's kind of saying that you can't control how people perceive you, so you may as well not worry about it. Like there's a phrase that I heard recently. I don't know who said it, but some celebrity, probably on Smartless or something. But they said, "How other people feel about me is none of my business."
Oh yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
I've never heard it before, but it's really stuck with me since I heard it. And I was just thinking about that phrase while we were watching this movie.
Or as RuPaul would like to say, if they're not paying my rent, pay them bitches no mind.
Oh, yeah, which is the same.
Yeah.
Which is the same.
But cooler.
Yeah. But yeah, he doesn't handle the whole situation very well. So
that's an understatement.
Yes. And the way to deal with that would be to not go on the news, would be to maybe swallow your pride a little bit and put your family before your own interests. But that, I feel like that's a lesson that he learns in the film.
Do you think he would have gone down the same road had his life not turned out the way it did? Because obviously we get that moment where he meets up with an old collaborator or an old colleague.
Oh yeah, like a college friend or something at the start of the movie when he records the conversation.
And he's literally begging her, like saying, "Oh, please, like credit me," or it's pathetic.
Yeah.
And it's cringe and it's painful to listen to. But again, it sort of speaks to his character. But do you think if stuff like that hadn't happened, if his ex hadn't come out of the woodwork and asked to write about him, like, you know, all these things that sort of set the whole thing in motion, do you think he would have grasped at that ladder that had been chucked down to him, that just that little tease of potential fame?
I don't know, because his ex was dreaming about him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe his college mate was dreaming about him.
No, I think that was prior to all of that stuff kicking off.
Yeah.
Do you think it's fame that he's really after, or do you think it's just recognition? Or do you think he's just a little bit of a sad man who needs an ego massage?
I maybe am tempted to go with that one, because he wants this stuff, but he's not willing to work for it. So he doesn't want to be, they bring up, do you want to be an alt-right commentator? And he's like, no, not really. But also, like, given time, maybe 5 years down the line, I would posit that maybe that's exactly what he ends up doing.
Maybe he's the next Alex Jones. Maybe that's what the frog keyring was all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Would he have done it? Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's much that. Yeah, I don't think there's much that could have swayed him from the decisions that he made during that, because he just wanted to be. He wanted something. He wanted. I don't know what it was. Maybe like a mortality thing. He wanted to be remembered or known for something, and he was, just not in the way that he wanted.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what makes my sympathy diminish, because objectively, he's got a loving wife. He's got a fantastic career. He's got 2 kids. He's got a really lovely house. He doesn't want for material things, it seems like, but he's still unfulfilled. And that's why I find him very sad. But it seems like what he really wants is sort of not really a tangible thing.
Maybe he doesn't know what he wants.
Well, I think that's part of it, yeah. He thinks he does.
Yeah.
But because he's lacking in that self-awareness, he's just like,
yeah.
Oh, people are talking about me. And he just latches onto that.
Maybe he just wants to be in the conversation. Like he's desperate to get invited to those dinner parties. Is it Dylan Baker?
Yeah.
He's desperate to get invited there. And even when he gets invited and people don't turn up, he's still thrilled to be there.
Yeah.
I think maybe he just wants to be talked about. And so I do think it's maybe an ego thing.
I honestly, that's the antithesis of what I want. Which sounds curious as somebody who's putting their voice out there every week, but give me anonymity. Yeah, any day.
I did go on Reddit actually, and I read a few things on there. And there's one person, and I'm not going to say their name, but they commented on this movie, and specifically about Cage's character as well, Paul's character. So they said he was a bum that took his wife's last name, let her take his house, and farts when he almost has sex. If he just learns how to not fart when that happens, he'll be okay.
I mean, I don't think that's the pinnacle of his issues.
No, that made me laugh. That the only reason I read it is because it made me laugh. Because, well, for a start, they say that the house is hers. She grew up in it, and I think if he just stops farting, I don't think that's going to solve all of his problems. It's healthy, as he said. It's perfectly natural. It's just relaxed. That was probably my favourite moment in this movie.
That was my least favourite moment. It's unbearable.
It's the funniest moment.
It is unbearable.
Going back to our first episode, we spoke quite a lot about the Jungian stuff in where we were talking about Come True.
We did, yeah.
And that's very prevalent in this movie as well.
Yeah, the whole collective unconscious things coming up time and time again.
The collective unconscious is the big thing in this film, and that's actually at the end of the movie. They cousin Greg has come on and said he unwittingly proved that there was a collective unconscious. So tying it right back to the Carl Jung stuff that we spoke about in the first movie. Yeah, and also like some of the actions that his different personas in people's dreams are taking. You know, you could argue that I've heard some fan theories bandied around like, well, firstly, all of the dream stuff, is it just his dreams? Is it the only stuff that's real is maybe the stuff that was happening with his family, and the rest is all in his dreams? Like he's dreaming that people are dreaming about him, which is a possibility.
I don't know if I like that.
But then, well, there's that. But then also, if you take it all on face value and it's all people are dreaming about him and there is a collective unconscious, is he somehow tapping into that and sort of inceptionizing these thoughts, which is something we'll talk about in a future episode? Is he planting these thoughts unknowingly in people's minds about his different kind of alter egos? I do notice that as the film goes on and he becomes more of a participant in these dreams and can get quite horrific. It strikes me that some of those things that he's doing in those dreams could reflect the decisions that he's making in real life and how perhaps he's beginning to see himself.
I guess so. What, that he's becoming more self-aware?
Yeah, like maybe, yeah, precisely. Like some of the stuff that when he begins to be a participant is maybe acting out is it the shadow self?
Yeah.
Just the thing that he keeps suppressed?
Basically that's my take on it. And I think I read that in the interview as well.
Okay.
I believe the interview was at IndieWire, if anybody wants to read it. It's quite enlightening.
Cool.
But yeah, I think the intention was that he's got all these negative traits and he's sort of putting them out into the world all the time, and the idea is that if he doesn't confront them, they'll start taking over his subconscious and people will start seeing that version of you in their dreams. Look, I am not nearly smart enough to pick that apart and tell you exactly what it means, but I quite like that. I quite like that take. So he's so entrenched in this version of himself, and the fact that he's so concerned with his perception to other people is in itself a negative trait, because it's quite a self-involved point of view. Yep. It's quite like self-obsessed.
No one gives a fuck, mate, really.
Yeah.
Like, just crack on.
Like most people probably aren't thinking about you at all.
No, exactly.
But because he's been stewing on it for such a long time and he's a bit pathetic and a bit weedy and a bit, so he's projecting all of these negative personality traits into the world. So that's what sort of penetrated the collective unconscious, and that's why people are seeing him in their dreams. And he starts off just by being inactive.
An observer.
Yeah. Just there.
Yeah.
Bit of an appendage, and then it progresses to him being like increasingly malevolent and then violent.
Yeah.
And then he even has that dream where there's a version of him killing another version, which obviously can relate back to the whole Jungian idea of killing the shadow self, like you said.
Yeah.
It's very clever.
It's really clever. Yeah.
And I don't think I fully appreciated that on first watch.
I did not at all fully appreciate this. Like I enjoyed it, like I said, when we saw it at the cinema, and I thought maybe this would be the first movie that we've covered that we also spoke about on our Patreon feed, but we didn't cover it.
Did we not?
No, we didn't.
Oh.
I thought we did for some reason.
I thought we did,
but no, sadly we didn't. But I enjoyed it very much when we saw it, and it made me laugh. But it's not until this viewing where I managed, and this happens all the time when we're watching the films, we've really got to think about them. But also watching it in the context of this season, in our dream season, has really helped me unpack this film.
Same. I think watching it so closely to Come True and having delved into all the Jungian theories really helped to unpack this quite a bit.
Yeah. And I would say out of all of the movies that I've chosen, and some would argue that some are less about dreams, although I would argue that you're wrong, because it might take go and listen to those episodes. But I was really quite worried about this one because it was so new, and I wasn't sure about how I felt about it. I knew that I enjoyed it and I liked it, like I said, but I didn't know how much there was to dig into. It turns out a lot.
Yeah.
And really nice to just have it in this dream season. And one of the things that I enjoy about doing theme seasons is that you can find these through lines with movies and these concepts, and often like inspired by the same things. And
yeah.
So having watched this movie in this season, I think was I'm patting myself on the back.
You are
there,
literally patting yourself on the back right now.
Yeah, no, it was really good to unpack this one actually.
Yeah.
And watch it, particularly with that Carl Jung stuff, and that's not an area that I've really had that much interest in. I think I said in episode 1, I very rarely remember my dreams. It's not something I pay a great deal of attention to. Have started researching it a bit more for this season, and I'm learning a bit more, and it's a fascinating area.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's dense. But yeah, I definitely think we benefited from having delved into that stuff so recently.
Yeah.
This is going to seem out of the blue, but I want to go back a little bit. There's one scene that I love. I didn't love it the first time because it sort of played out in quite an offbeat way. But when they have the break-in at the house, I think I came to appreciate that scene way more the second time, because it's the perfect example of his inaction.
Yeah.
Like, he's so obsessed with being this like hero in everybody's perception. And he's so confused that he's just showing up in people's dreams doing nothing. And yet when he's faced with a dilemma, with this dangerous scenario where he could actually do something, he does fuck all.
Yeah.
And he sort of, he stands there like, almost like doing the Edvard Munch scream face, like just sort of no sound is coming out of his mouth, and but he looks horrified. It's like, well, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, and it's an interesting scene because it is like it's one of the scariest moments of the film, because literally like there's an intruder in their house, and it may be, he wasn't aware that, or wasn't intentionally entering people's dreams, let's say, but the way that he dealt with it maybe has led to this situation. People were warning him, he says to Janet's like, well, I told you, we should be careful about this, and he sort of says, well, you thought this exact thing was going to happen? No, you didn't. And she's like, no, but this sort of thing, like you'll become a celebrity, you are open to these kind of interactions, and that's something that actually happened to Nicolas Cage, and there was an actual break-in into his house while he was sleeping.
Oh wow!
So yeah, that was very real for him as well, I think.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
that sounds terrifying.
But you're right. It's in that scene is a perfect. You could watch that scene and maybe determine what this movie is about.
Yeah, I think so. It's a pivotal moment.
It's a pivotal moment, and I really like that in films where there's a scene that happens like that, and you're like, okay, yeah, that really sums up what this film is about, and it's definitely his inaction. Like, clearly in that moment, he would want to be protecting his family. Like, he's probably imagined this scenario at some point, like, yeah, if someone comes in, I'm going to kung fu them in the face and whatever. But like, faced with that reality,
an oversized suit.
yeah, he can't get a good high kick like he does in Con Air with that suit. But yeah, so he doesn't do anything really, and it turns out fine. But that was his chance to really, and he has multiple chances to make the, I don't know if I would say right decision, but a better decision.
Yeah, to make the imagined version of him match the real thing a bit more closely, at least.
Because I don't think I would bog this movie down to being right or wrong, because I think that's too binary.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a morality tale.
No, it's too grey for that, and that's what's good about it, is that life is very grey. There is no right or wrong. There is just the best thing that you think you can do in that particular time period. And I like that. I
think the other sort of most pivotal moment is the one that we've already talked about, the scene that's played very much for discomfort and laughs, with the intern
Molly,
where she's do you know what, Dylan Galula, look her up online, she's fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah,
I think the first thing I ever saw her in was a Cooper Raiff movie called, I think in the States it was called Shithouse. And over here we got the much more bland title Freshman Year, but I loved it. And she's brilliant, but she's so funny in real life. I love her. And she was good in this as well. But that scene, oh my God. As soon as she started saying she'd had a sex dream about him, I was like, oh, this is going to go nowhere good.
Did you do that thing that you always mention in Ren and Stimpy when you got sucked into your own belly button?
Yeah, I collapsed in on myself like a dying star. It was horrendous.
I loved it. I enjoyed it, and enjoyed watching it again. I enjoyed watching it at cinema. I enjoyed watching that scene again yesterday when we watched it together for the podcast, and I enjoyed watching it again today when I saw that scene come on, and I stopped building my wardrobe to watch that scene again, and then turned it up.
Oh God,
it's natural. You mean something like that?
His face immediately after as well is perfection.
He has the best faces in this. Just like almost like silent film kind of, like he's saying so much. And after that scene where he just kind of looks up and he squints his eyes and he just does
it's
this.
It's the gritting of the teeth and like.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It is perfect. It's so funny, and you can see all of the anguish in his face and the shame, the embarrassment.
Yeah.
And he just leaves at that point.
I mean, you would, right?
Well, you should. I would argue
you
shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah, all right.
But yeah, there's also this complex thing where he thinks his wife is maybe seeing someone else as well. So it's. I'm not saying that he's right. He should go, oh, she's doing it, so I can do it too. Mm-hmm. But it's grey.
I think he just got so wrapped up in this sort of, oh, I've got the attention of somebody who's young and attractive.
Yeah.
And it just sort of unraveled from there.
Yeah. And I think after that point is where, obviously, in her dream, he is an intruder in her house.
Yeah.
And I think after that as well is when things start to get much, much darker.
Yeah, it sort of serves as like the halfway point where things get a bit bleaker.
Yeah. And I wonder if, because the people's dreams about him are getting much darker, is that he's beginning to see himself. Like maybe in that scene he's thinking, yeah, that wasn't great that I did that. So he's beginning to understand himself a bit more and see himself as a bad guy. You know, so, he's not. I wouldn't say that he's a bad guy. He's just makes bad decisions, as we've discussed already. But
he's just pathetic. He's not bad.
If that was me, I would start questioning things and go, yeah, I haven't made it. Am I good? And like, should I be thinking about things a bit more? And then that's where your sort of development comes in, and you question your decisions and you try to be a better person. And I think maybe like the fact that he is turning up in people's dreams and being way more sinister after that point is a reflection of how he's beginning to see himself, maybe.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And it's sort of the point where he's beginning to think about maybe the consequences of his actions or inaction.
Yeah.
To be more accurate.
Absolutely. So towards the end, things get really bad for him. Like his life just starts to completely fall apart. His book comes out, and as you've already said, it's more like a zine. It's wafer thin, and
he's being led around by Michael Cera,
which nobody wants unless it's Michael Cera from the Barbie movie.
I was going to say from Arrested Development.
No, just Alan. We accept Alan.
Yeah.
But yeah, his wife's kind of left him / kicked him out at this point.
Yeah. Is she beginning to see her co-worker? That was hinted at, wasn't it?
I think her co-worker was next to her at the school play.
Yeah.
When he kind of bursts in and accidentally assaults the teacher.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's awful.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hinted at, but I don't know. Inconclusive.
I ask that question because there's the thing where she kind of tries to steamroller her way onto a project that he's working on. And I wonder what's going on there, because he is at the kids' play or whatever it is that the kid's doing. And that's odd, you know, who invites a co-worker to go and watch their kid at school? Maybe they're really close, I don't know.
I might.
But yeah.
My co-worker's my best mate.
Okay, that's fair, but you don't have children. If the cats are in the play, you have your cats together, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like there's a weird dynamic there. Also, I noticed in this viewing that he's a bald man. He doesn't have hair like Paul Matthews. He wears those jumpers with the zip just at the top, just like Paul Matthews, and that's not an accident. Like that's clearly by design. And is that us trying to say that she's trying to replace him to a certain degree? Because I feel like
I don't view it that way. I view it more as these things that Paul, I don't know, like, I think deep down Paul sees himself as quite pathetic. I think if he were to be honest with himself.
Yeah, I think, maybe you're right, yeah.
Whereas it seems like this other bloke is just a bit more accepting and therefore not as pathetic, even though he displays a lot of the same traits.
Yeah, he's unlikable for a different reason. Like he says, I don't believe in cancel culture, but he does. He, like I say, he dresses the same. He has the same haircut or lack of a haircut as Paul Matthews. And I wondered if it was something like she's maybe searching for something similar to Paul Matthews, but not quite the same. Maybe
Well, yeah,
is that just...
I think she was happy apart from his dissatisfaction in the marriage. So
I agree. I agree. From her character, from that performance, I feel like she loves him.
Yeah,
and she wants him to be a man of action.
Especially that last moment was heartbreaking when he drops the kids off and she looks like she's on the verge of tears.
Yeah,
and he has that imagined thing where he sort of reaches out to her and they hug, and it's quite a tender moment. But he still does nothing. In reality, he still does nothing. And I really felt for her in that moment.
Yeah, I feel like she wanted him.
Yeah.
She still loves him. She still wants him. And if only he would do something about it, he might have a shot. You know, you've got some making up to do, mate. But, you know, if this is what you want, this is what you should be doing. And I felt like that's what she wanted too. It's
quite sad. Do you see the ending as optimistic?
I see it as realistic.
Okay. Because I think on second watch, there was a moment where I was just like, I feel like there's a version of the script with a truly, truly bleak ending. There was a moment at which I was like, oh, is this going to go horribly? But actually, it sort of hints at a sliver of optimism. So do you think the dream at the end... Because obviously, he, at this point, he's bought that silly device where you're supposed to sort of train yourself to be able to enter other people's dreams, which is highly unethical.
Nori, something?
Norio,
something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Cousin Greg invents that device and they're using it to inceptionize people with adverts, which is...
I hate it, but
exactly what would
definitely
happen.
The next step, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hugely unethical. But he's been trying to do that. And obviously the dream sequence at the very end resembles the conversation that they'd had.
Yeah.
Like he asked her, if you did have a dream and I showed up in it, what would be your fantasy? And so it sort of plays out the way that she'd described, down to the comically oversized talking head suit.
Is it David Burns?
David Burns suit,
David Burns suit, yeah. I think it can be read either way. I've seen people really slate this movie and say it's a really depressing ending, but I don't think it's that clear cut.
I view it as quite optimistic, and I'm like, I love a downbeat ending. Yeah. But my question is, do you think it's her dream that he's successfully infiltrated, or do you think it's his dream?
I think it's his dream.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, firstly, I don't really see it as optimistic or pessimistic. I see it as, and I said realistic, and I'm going to stick with that.
Just sort
because
of
it's kind of a bit of both. It's optimistic in that I feel like, because at the start when she tells, in the middle of the movie, when she tells him about her fantasy, I want you wearing a big suit. He like scoffs and he's like, oh, you know, sort of brushes it off a bit, and now that's a bit silly. But by the end of it, he's doing it. So, you know, he's learned something. Maybe it's a bit silly or whatever, but it's her fantasy, you know, just go with it, shut up. So I feel like he's learned something, which is the positive side of it. The bad side is that he has lost his family, but there is a different relationship that you can have there. Like, not all is lost. You know, maybe you get divorced, but, you know, lots of people stay friends with their exes, and that's fine. You've still got kids. You got paid a lot of money from being dismissed from university, and you've got this sweet book deal with Michael Cera too. But,
I think that might have been slightly overblown.
But I don't see it as a terribly depressing ending. But I do think it's his dream, and the reason I think that is because he's the one that floats away. I don't know, you could read it in two ways, because like when I first saw it, I thought maybe it is her dream and he's entered her dream, giving her the closure, and she's letting him go, quite literally. But then also it could be that he's still not taking any action by going into her dream, which I'm not saying that was the right thing to do, because I'm
sketchy
and stuff. Yeah But like, he's still not taking action, and he's the one having this dream, and he can sense that she's letting him go. I think you could read it either way, but I think I'm on the side of it's his dream.
Okay.
Personally.
I'm going to oppose you and say, I agree that it's neutral, but I think it's more hopeful than that.
Okay.
And I think it's her dream because I want to believe it's her dream.
But she's letting him go.
I know, but for no other reason than I want it to be her dream. Like I said,
okay.
It's not based on what happens on screen. It's because I'm apparently some disgusting, hopeless romantic. And my ideal ending is where they get back together and sort things out.
Okay.
But who knows? Maybe Julianne Nicholson boots him and trades up
to
a different bald man with zipped up sweaters.
Yeah, not the guy she was working with, Chris, I think it was called.
So before we start wrapping up, I've got one last question for you.
All right.
In the world of dream scenario, would you rather, you have to have a dream about Nick Cage, would you rather it was a dream about Nick Cage where he beats you around the head with a meat cleaver, like he does with the student in the dream, or would you rather have a sex dream about Nick Cage where he's wearing a big David Byrne suit?
That's a trick question.
Is it?
I don't want to be hit around the head with a meat sausage, a meat
Careful.
Hammer. Oh my God.
That's not conclusive as to which one you want.
Oh, Freud! Damn you. Why did I say meat sausage?
Because we watched a Guy Ritchie film last night where they used the word sausage quite a lot.
That's right. Now, I would like to have a conversation with Guy Ritchie about Sigmund Freud.
Yes.
What were we talking about?
Which dream would you rather have?
Oh, come on. I'm going to have the sex one because otherwise I'm dead in the other one, aren't I?
Yeah, all right.
So I'm going to have to... Hang on. In the sex dream, right? Am I doing a premature ejaculation like Nicolas Cage? Or is he coming on to me? Yeah. Who am I in that scenario?
You're you.
What am I doing then?
I don't know. It's your dream.
So I'm sitting there and he's in the corner, like in Molly's dream.
Sure.
And he walks over and then grabs my hair at the back and starts to kiss me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that actually. Maybe not as his character in this though. Maybe I'd prefer if it was Cameron Poe, I think.
Would you?
Yeah.
With the mullet.
Yeah.
The mullet and the wife beater vest does it for you.
I'm not saying it does it for me. I'm saying if I've got to pick a Cage movie where
sure.
I have relations, I did not have relations. If I've got to have relations with a Nicolas Cage character, I should think about this. But then Stanley Goodspeed from The Rock is very clean cut and he's clever as well. You can have some good conversations with him.
What about John Travolta with Nicolas Cage's face?
Now you'd have to pay me. So it's John Travolta's personality.
Yeah.
So he's a Scientologist
it's a big
still.
2 thumbs down.
Yeah. I really want to watch Face Off. It's been a minute since I watched that. Next Monday. Yeah, I'm sticking with Cameron Poe. What would you do in that scenario then?
The sex dream.
Yeah, it has to be, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It can't be the one where you get killed because you'd be dead.
And it'd be Dracula. Obviously.
The regeneration where he's regenerating or full body Nicolas Cage?
Well, obviously, regular.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question though. Like I enjoyed that question, particularly after I would say maybe one of the more kind of interesting, less knob gaggy chats that we've had in a while.
We're capable.
But yeah, I liked that very highbrow question at the end of our very intellectual conversation there.
You're welcome.
It was good. It was a good way to cap it.
Any final thoughts on Dream Scenario?
Only that if you've only seen it once, I would say it's definitely worth a rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of how you felt about it. I mean, if you hated it, don't waste your time. But if you, like me, you kind of thought, yeah, that was okay. It's really worth another watch because I got so much more from it.
Mm-hmm.
The nuances in the performance and the script and just the little things like the props and the sets designs. You know, he's reading a book about the zebras that we pointed out yesterday. It's one of those films where it's all been very meticulously crafted,
mm-hmm.
and it all means something. And I like that. And that's only the sort of thing you can get on a rewatch. So I'm really glad that we had it in this season. Glad that we spoke about it. Glad that I bought it because
Yeah, me too.
I think I could watch this maybe, I wouldn't say any time, but it's definitely one that I'm going to revisit time and time again. And we were going to rent it because it's not streaming anywhere. So we were going to rent it and pay maybe £3 or £4 for that. But it was on offer for £8. So got that, bang. I've watched it twice already. It's one more time and it's paid for itself already. So I'm happy with that.
I'm genuinely really happy you picked it for this lineup as well. And I'll be honest and say that I quite liked it when we watched it last year. but I wasn't thrilled when I saw it in the lineup because I didn't love it and I was unsure what we would talk about. But I'm so glad that we gave it a second shot because, as you said, appreciated it so much more on second viewing. And just, I mean, Nicolas Cage is the man, isn't he? He's such an intuitive actor. And I think he's got a lot more in him, and I'm excited to see what else he does now.
Well, he there's talk of him not really doing many more movies. He wants to kind of move into television.
For fuck's sake.
Yeah, I know. Just when you're making interesting movies again, mate, just do this. Do a Mandy sequel. Well, no, don't do sequels. No. Do like National Treasure 3 or whatever you want to do. I don't know. But
we need him in a Jim Cummings movie.
I think that might happen. I think they're, I think they're
hopefully.
pals now. Yeah, that would be perfect. A perfect pairing, wouldn't it?
I'd love that.
It really would. I would love. Honestly, there was talk of a Face Off sequel not that long ago now with old mate who's the
Adam Wingard.
With Adam Wingard, yeah.
I remember that.
And I again, like in two minds on that. Like, I would love to see those characters again. Because it's a phenomenal movie. Like, it's as dumb as it is, and it knows it's dumb. It's really well done, and some of the stuff that happens in it is spectacular. And it's John Woo, but you're not going to recapture that John Woo magic from that movie. So part of me is like, maybe leave it alone. But I think out of all of his movies, I would like to see a sequel to that one.
Okay.
If he has to do one, I mean, you're not getting Sean Connery back, so you can't do the Rock sequel.
What about Pig 2? Pig in the City?
Only if it's got James Cromwell in it as the pig.
That can be arranged.
Yeah.
What are we doing next week?
Oh, next week. So next week we are going back to maybe the best year ever. Maybe the best year ever in terms of cinema releases. Maybe the best year ever just in general, because it's the year I was born, 1984.
Oh, God. What is it?
It's actually about dreams. It's called Dreamscape. We're doing a Dennis Quaid movie.
I haven't seen this.
Very good. So that'll be interesting. First time watch for you.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in so long that it may as well be a first time watch for me. And got a nice juicy second sight Blu-ray to crack open and watch it on. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Sight in.
Yeah.